Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before I call this meeting to order, I will ask that you silence your cell phones and other electronic devices as you have them. And I will call this land use planning meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. by formally recognizing that we are meeting on Aboriginal land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. As settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to be good stewards of this land and thank all of the generations of people who have taken care of this place for thousands of years. In particular, we acknowledge the proud heritage of our neighbors from Alderville First Nation and the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council amend the agenda to add a discussion related to the proposal partnership with the Bay of Quinte Tourism under unfinished business 7.2. And in order for this to be added, it would have to be considered of an urgent nature and would need a 2/3 majority decision. So Councillor Rowley, could you please explain why this may be considered an urgent matter?
Thank you, Mayor. I received an email very late today, 3:30, from Mr. Doug Stevenson from the Bay of Quinte. I would just like their brochure is going to print on Monday, a week from today. Council doesn't meet again before then. I would just like a discussion around whether or not we could participate and be part of that brochure before it goes out.
Thank you. So I'll call the vote. All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried.
That means we're part of the plan.
Not yet. No, it means we will discuss it under unfinished business. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council approve the April 8th, 2019 planning meeting agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And I'll ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest, and if so, please state the general nature thereof. There are none noted. We have no delegations this evening. So we'll move straight into our statutory public meeting, and I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council move into the statutory public meeting April 8th, 2019 at 6:32 p.m. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Our first item on the statutory public meeting is a decision for a zoning bylaw amendment for the following application, being Z04-2019. The owners are the Physio House Properties Incorporated, Kyle Maringer. The location is part lots 12 and 13 in Registered Plan 28, Part 1 of Plan 38R, 3861, 148 Main Street. Mr. Tai, by what method and on what date was notice of this zoning bylaw amendment application given?
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of the bylaw was sent by first-class prepaid mail to all property owners within 120 meters on March the 15th, 2019. Notice was also circulated to prescribed ministries and agencies under the Planning Act, and a sign was posted on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. Would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and what it would accomplish?
The purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject lands from Urban Residential 2 to Urban Residential 2 Exception 38 in order to permit a medical clinic including physiotherapy, chiropractic, and massage therapy uses, in addition to 2 residential uses on the upper floor. The zoning bylaw amendment also includes special provisions related to parking and landscaping. A holding provision is to be placed on the zoning until a site plan agreement has been executed for the subject property with the municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. Does the owner, applicant, or agent wish to make any comments this evening? No? None noted? All right. Mr. Tai simply informed us on what date and by what method the notice was given. and then provided us a brief explanation, which if you have an agenda, would be available there as well. I can read it again if you'd like. Thank you. So are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application?
Like a letter to the council about my objection to this.
Could you come up, please?
Will Carmichael from Sanford Street.
We'll need you, the meetings are recorded, Will, so we'll need you to turn the microphone on by pushing the button on that side and then the lavender button in front of you.
So on the side, maybe the other side. And then it's over.
There you go. Okay.
Thank you.
Will Carmichael, Sanford Street. I provided a letter of objection to the zoning change to this facility. You mentioned that the application for zoning change was posted. I walk my dogs around that block all the time, and I've never seen it. I only received notice of this in the mail, so I don't know where it was posted exactly. The main reason we're looking at opposing this is for two reasons. I have a physio background myself, and this location simply doesn't work. Accessibility, parking is another issue. You're looking at 15 to 20 spaces minimum, with 4 designated for disabled, specifically for the type of clientele you're working with in the clinic. Accessibility, simply trying to access Main Street, getting out from Francis Street. If you try to look up left, you're blind because of cars parked on Main Street. The cars are hurtling from downtown at a quick pace. If you're looking west downwards, you've lost sight of oncoming cars because they're in the valley in front of the YMCA, so you're blind either way trying to access Main Street. Then on top of that, if you have any blockages of the 401 where the trucks and cars are rediverted, it's a nightmare trying to get onto Main Street from Francis Street. As you know, for the last 2 years, Sanford Street has been ripped up and been a nightmare to drive on. I know it's scheduled this year, this spring, supposedly, to be redone. But that'll be another probably 8-10 months of disruption for us to have to deal with. So Francis Street in itself is a single lane road. It was never properly developed to be a proper width road. So there's no parking whatsoever on Francis Street. So any parking for this facility would have to be on site. And if you're looking at the site, they have the lot they site, they'd have to demolish the garage in order to put in enough spaces for this facility. It just doesn't make sense. The added traffic, we already have too much blockage of people just stopping and parking on Francis Street and blocking the neighbors trying to get in and out, just access to get around town.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. And you've detailed that in a letter to council. And Mr. Tai, you've received that letter for the file as well?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I was handed a copy tonight.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anything further?
No, not currently from me. Everything is basically covered in here.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else present who wishes to make comments or has questions with regard to this zoning bylaw amendment? Please come to the microphone, ma'am.
The apartment
And
building,
I'll ask you to introduce yourself for the record.
pardon me,
I'll ask you to introduce yourself for the record. Your name?
Helen Anthony.
Thank you, Helen. Go ahead.
The apartment building where I live originally was for seniors. Of course, it's been downloaded to the municipality. There are 14 parking spots right across from my home, and there are 27 or 30 apartments there. There is no visitor parking. Consequently, everyone parks up and down the street, up and down. Our driveways are often blocked. I've gone out several times. I couldn't barely get out of the driveway. And this has been and the street is very narrow. So consequently, it's just, you have trucks parking there, and people have to go in and out to get down the street. and that's a big concern with everyone on the street. We have no parking for our own families when they come to visit. They have to park down on the highway, or they have to park down, even I had people park down at the medical center. So that's a real contention with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who has comments or questions with regard to the zoning bylaw amendment?
Yes, it's Sheila Daw. I live on Francis Street, right across the street from this rezoning application to commercial. And I just want to reiterate just what the other people have said. It's a very narrow street. There's hardly any parking for our visitors. And I just don't like the idea of, I mean, it should be a quiet little street in Brighton. And I'm just afraid if it's going to be zoned commercial for a business, it's just going to be, well, I just don't like the idea of it. So
Thank you.
that's
Thank you
all
for
I
your
have to
comments.
say.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anyone else? Are you the agent? Well, I'll get back to you. I'll circle back. Anyone else? Anyone else from the public with comments or questions? Are there any questions or comments regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment from members of council? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. Could I just get a little clarification? I believe Mrs. Anthony spoke regarding the apartments that she lives in, that they have been downloaded to the municipality. Do we own anything to do with that?
No.
No.
It would be county. So
That's right. That was my question. I didn't realize
in
that
terms of municipality, it would be to the upper tier.
for the county.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments from council? Councillor Anderson?
I'm not sure if it's time I could ask the new owners, what are the hours going to be? How busy will it be? How many people do they expect, or patients or customers to come at a given time?
Did you hear those questions? So they will respond when I ask for
That's what
them
I'm
to come back.
saying. I'd like
It's good to have the question,
Those are questions I'd like to ask.
and they can respond when I call them forward again. Okay? Anybody else? Councillor LeBlanc?
Through you, Mayor. From listening to them, there's a parking problem already there. I wonder what our bylaw officer's doing if he's going there and ticketing these people that shouldn't be there.
That would be a question we could ask Mr. Castleman tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And we will, I'm sure. Any other questions from members of council? Comments? Does the owner or applicant or agent wish to make any comments, or in this case, answer a specific question from member of council?
Yes, thank you. Dennis Martin, I'm the agent for Kyle, who's the owner-operator of the Physio House. Kyle's been working in the communities from Colbert to Belleville for the past few years, and he respects and I respect everybody's concerns, so we just want to address a few things. So the accessibility for the building.
Yeah, just pull the microphone closer. Good. Yeah.
Yes, the accessibility of the building, we did design it very specifically when I went through the project, just from my experience doing commercial buildings and barrier-free design, to ensure that the first floor area that's going to be used for the facility serving the public would have all of the facilities required for barrier-free accessibility, including parking. The parking itself that's designed is all off-street parking, which includes drop-off zone, because we do understand that there's a fair percentage of the clientele that wouldn't be driving as well. The idea that we wanted to make sure that we do have the off-street parking, we've got two phases designed that you would have seen in record. Phase one being the immediate future for the next 2 to 3 years, that from Kyle's experience would require the amount of parking spaces that's provided on the design, and clearly marked phase one. And if the occupant load increased, that we would have phase two in place to add 3 more parking spaces for the residential suites that are on the second floor. So I think that addresses the parking, that we wouldn't be affecting the street parking in any way. In regards to the street itself, I understand that is a designed street, municipal street that does have a stop sign and everything's accessible to it. We do know there's neighbors, and again, trying to respect that and maintaining the aesthetic of the building as well, not to be, out any obscure design or anything. We're, try to keep very conservative in its layout, and including the front facade of the building facing on Main Street, specifically. The apartments, I'm not too sure about the comment regarding that, and I know it's probably a different project or condition if the other parking tenants are using street parking. I don't know if we can have anything to do with that, with this project specifically, but we understand that there's the trouble with that already, so we'll do our best to make sure that we don't have any on-street parking. As far as hours of operation, the understanding at this point would be Monday to Friday would be Monday to Wednesday 8 to 4:30, maybe 8 to 5, and potentially Wednesday might change, and then Thursday, Friday would be till 6:30, 7 o'clock. So there wouldn't be any main evening or weekend activity, other than the tenants, of course. There's designated parking as well that's been designed on the parking lot for them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you have a question, Mr. Bateman?
Yes, if I could just ask,
Well, we're in a statutory public meeting, so the opportunity will be, if we decided to move forward, you could ask a question when we read the motion. Is that fair? Yeah. Fair enough. Mr. Tai, do you have any final comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is exactly what the official plan for the municipality of Brighton promotes within the Main Street revitalization area. It offers or proposes a blend of commercial and residential, where the upper floor of this building is going to be converted into 2 residential units. Also, the proposed parking required for the ultimate build-out of this project, calculated at 17 spaces. They are able to provide 14 on site. Staff are comfortable with that slight reduction in parking. The provincial policy statement and the growth plan both promote reduced standards in built-up or settlement areas, and in staff's opinion, this application conforms.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. Does council wish to make a decision at this time on the zoning bylaw amendment application? Yes? Okay. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receives the report regarding rezoning application Z04-2019, Physio House Properties Incorporated, as prepared by the municipal planning consultants, and that council enacts a bylaw to rezone certain lands located in part lots 12 and 13 in Registered Plan 28, being Part 1 of Plan 38R 3861, of the municipality of Brighton from Urban Residential 2 zone to Urban Residential 2 exception number 38 holding zone. Is there any discussion? Councillor Bateman, you had a question.
just on the parking, and I think they answered there's going to be 14 spots, and I'm looking at the Physio House, there's currently 3 locations, so this will be an additional 4th. Are you offering the same services that all the other ones that you currently have, and is 14 spots enough for what Physio House offers?
So the applicant has responded yes to that question. I'm just repeating that for the purpose of the recording. Is there any further questions? Councillor Anderson?
I just make a comment that I like the idea that they're going to remove that garage to make the extra space that you asked about, and also that they're going to preserve the heritage value of that property, being a 100-year-old property, I understand. And with the everything else going on Main Street there, and preserving the heritage value with the apartment, the Masonic Hall, that's nearby too. I think that's good. That part of the community is going to look pretty good. So I'll just
Councillor Tadman?
Yes, through you, Mayor. The one question I was just wanting to ask the people that are developing this property is how many patients at one particular hour would be there to occupy those parking spaces?
They usually only have 3 patients per hour.
So you have about 3, maybe 1 or 2 wait for the next appointment. Our transit location only has 7 parking spots in the pathway. That's our first clinic that's established.
So for the purposes of the recording, we heard that there are 3 patients per hour at that location, or we would anticipate 3 patients per hour at that location. Any other questions or comments? And I'll remind members of council, this is a debate between us. We really shouldn't be asking the applicant or agent any questions at this stage, but we'll carry on. Councillor Tadman.
Well, it's the only way we can get an answer.
Well, we could ask through the planning consultant, and if we didn't get the answers we wanted tonight, we could defer the matter to another planning meeting.
And what would be the point in that?
Because we don't have the answers before us. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. To Mr. Tai, could you please explain to me the holding designation on this?
Through the chair, the application is proposing significant alteration or change in use of the building, as well as some expansion, as well as a reorganization of a parking area, and therefore the application is deemed to require site plan approval through the municipality through a future decision of council should the rezoning pass. So subsequent to this evening, should the application be approved by council, then the next step for the applicant owner would then to go through the site plan approval stage, including an application, a review by staff, a report back to council, the site plan approval, and then a corresponding agreement between the municipality and the applicant registered on title.
Through you, Mayor, to the planner. This is only phase 1 of phase 2, or phase, so you're going to ensure that there's sufficient parking even with phase 2? And if there isn't sufficient parking, phase 2, is it all on the same piece of land, or is it more extended land?
Mr. Tai?
Mr. Chair, the site plan approval exercise.
Your microphone, Mr. Tai.
Through the chair, the site plan approval exercise will specifically address phase 1 of the development. And as the proposed expansion may or may not proceed, then that will require an amendment to site plan approval. So the applicant will be required to go through an application to amend a current approved site plan, which would require a second report back to council.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Bateman?
More of a comment and less a question when we get to all that stuff, which is going to be a good thing. But I was just going to say, if it passes everything, when you look at the services they offer, if everything lines up, these are great services that I think Brighton could utilize. Concussion management, I don't think that's something that we have currently in our municipality, and some of the other stuff. So as long as everything.
Thank you. And Mr. Tai, could you remind me when the municipality amended the official plan to allow for, or to conceive of these kinds of developments, commercial at the bottom, residential on the top?
Yes, Your Worship, the new official plan for the municipality of Brighton was adopted by Council of the Day in 2010, and it was approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing in 2014.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. Appreciate that. And the purpose, of course, is to encourage commercial product in our downtown core, while also continuing with the aesthetic of our main street. Is that about right?
That's correct.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'll call the vote. All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. The second item we'll consider in the statutory public meeting is a decision of council on a zoning bylaw amendment regarding the establishment and operation of cannabis production facilities within the municipality. Mr. Tai, by what method and on what date was notice of this zoning bylaw amendment application given?
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of the zoning bylaw amendment appeared in the Brighton Independent on March the 14th, 2019, and notice was also circulated to prescribed ministries and agencies under the Planning Act.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. Would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and what it would accomplish?
The purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to introduce provisions intended to regulate the establishment and operation of cannabis production facilities in the municipality, including the proposed amendment as attached to the report, introducing new or amended definitions, restricting the location operation of cannabis production facilities as permitted only in the general industrial or M1 zone, also requiring that these types of facilities be located only on full municipal services, specifically where capacity exists, requiring a minimum separation distance of 70 meters from any residential, commercial, open space, future development, or community facility zone.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. And this is a comprehensive zoning bylaw amendment, so there's no owner or applicant in per se. So I will move on and ask if there are persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application. Anyone? Yeah, come forward, please.
Hello, my name's Robert McIntosh. I noticed from the note that was in the newspaper that this bylaw pertains to all of Brighton, with no exceptions. And I have one concern about the existing cannabis facilities. Through you, Mayor, can someone answer how those existing facilities will be dealt with by the new bylaw, or the proposed bylaw?
So what I will do is I will go back to Mr. Tai to answer that question in a couple of questions. So we'll just take notes of those. Do you have any other questions to ask?
Not at the moment, thank you.
Is there anyone else present who has comments or questions? Members of council, comments or questions? Councillor LeBlanc?
On the bylaw where it says it can only be used on the town water and the town sewer system is a bit much, because most of the other municipalities where they have them, they're outside of the town water and sewer system, where they have them built, because I've looked at them. The ones that are presently operating in town or the municipality of Brighton are operating under a provision that was given to a doctor, that they were prescribed that they could smoke so much marijuana per day, which allowed them so many plants. And some of these people have pulled their plants to be grown. And talking to the OPP, the one that's by me, because I complained about the odors, I could smell them, they basically told me that they couldn't do much about them yet until there's enough cannabis being grown legally with the legal grow-ups. And that's where it is, and that's why they're not shutting them down. And most people are now, under the new regulation, can all grow 4 plants at their houses, and they're the new rules. That's what I found out from asking the OPP about it.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. Are any other questions or comments from members of council? No owner or applicant. Mr. Tai, I'd ask you to perhaps address the question asked by Mr. McIntosh and then make any final comments, please.
Through the chair, actually, my understanding is consistent with Councillor LeBlanc's. It's essentially a situation that's driven by the undersupply in the province. This province of Ontario, has been effectively late getting out of the gate on this particular item. Other provinces are quite a ways ahead. And once the legal production, if you will, of this product catches up to the demand or comes closer, then the other facilities are likely not to continue in existence.
Through you, Deputy Mayor.
I'm the mayor.
I mean, Mayor, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry. If this bylaw passes, then those facilities that are outside, that aren't on a sewer system, aren't on a water system maintained by the town, and don't meet that 70-meter point of impingement, basically can be legally shut down by the municipality, because they can go there because they do not conform with the bylaw.
Through the chair, this bylaw would apply to actually new facilities, given that the existing ones outside the area are actually operating beyond what might have been approved by this council. So it may become a legal question as to whether or not they're legal non-conforming or legal illegal non-conforming.
Right.
And that would be a matter to take up with the solicitor.
Does that answer your question, Mr. McIntosh?
Partly. I can understand the transports meeting with the OPP. I have a similar meeting with them. My concern is odor control. We've got facilities there in huge plastic bag greenhouses. There is absolutely no way that that can be filtered as it is. And so I'm looking for the municipality consistent with that.
Can you make any comments on that, Mr. Tai? So just for the record and for those who may not have been able to hear, the discussion is with regard to a facility in the municipality that is essentially a greenhouse operation where you may see the plastic coatings over the frames, and the nearby residents are experiencing significant odor issues, including Councillor LeBlanc. I believe that's the same.
Yes.
It's the same facility we're talking about. So, Mr. Tai, can you make any comments around how the municipality, or if the municipality, can assist in odor control or any control of those kinds of facilities?
Health Canada requires, Health Canada requires a production facility to have in place an air filtration or ventilation system for the purpose of odor reduction. In the event that these facilities that you're referring to do not have such an air filtration system, then it would be a case where either property owners could pursue the matter with Health Canada, or alternatively, municipal council could take up that cause.
So a bit off topic, I know, but could you expand on your comment? Municipal council could take up that cause. What could we do?
The municipality could actually approach Health Canada with a request to investigate and, if necessary, take action where any facility is operating without the air filtration system in place.
All right, well, we'll talk offline, because I think that's happened, and I think we're being we've run up against some federal roadblocks. Let's just say that, and I think Mr. McIntosh is smiling because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. But perhaps we can have a chat offline at some point this week. Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Councillor LeBlanc?
Yes, through you, Mayor, to the planner. I talked to the Ministry of Environment, and I understand a few of the things. So my complaint was that they didn't have a valid C of A, so they don't have a point source, or they don't have a land source for point of emissions. But because of the OPP and the Ministry of Environment, they can't stop it because they need the demand for health. It's going. But to be valid under the Health Canada, you need a valid C of A to have those emissions to be going. So you have a control system at certain CFM. You also have to have a Velovox system, which is basically a titanium platinum PCO that destroys the odors and the odors inside the plant, which they don't have. And it's one of those things, it's a gray market right now because we need the demand for the health, and they don't have it. They're out in 2 days. So when they blossom, you're going to get the smell. When they're not blossoming, you're not going to get the smell. But it's going to come as they mature. But as they develop, these ones will be shut down. They'll be limited to 4 plants, not what they're growing 500 plants per person. It's okay. Thank you.
That's a hope. Councillor Bateman.
It's a little off topic, but not. If we get to that point where we're going to be looking at the municipality be responsible for shutting them down, do we have any estimation of how many of these currently exist in our municipality?
Any idea, Mr. Tai? No, we don't. We don't. The owners of these facilities required Health Canada approval, but did not require any municipal approvals, provided they were opening them on lands that were zoned appropriately, in this case agriculture, and they needed to inform the OPP, but there was no requirement of the OPP to inform the municipality. Mr. Tai, maybe you've made them, but do you have any final comments?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Does council wish to make a decision on this, at this time, on this zoning bylaw amendment application? Okay. I have a motion moved by... Do you know that for sure? Well, why don't you tell everybody?
There's 11 presently in the Township of Brighton.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. The municipality swear jar.
Sorry, Mary, sorry, Councillor Tadman, in the municipality of
How
Brighton.
do you know so much?
Be asking that question the entire term, Councillor Tadman. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council receives the report regarding proposed zoning bylaw amendment cannabis production facilities as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and that subject to any public input and or new information received at the statutory public meeting, council proceed to enact the bylaw as presented. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. And the third item before the statutory public meeting is a decision of council on a zoning bylaw amendment for the following application, being Z03 2019. The owner is Rod McLean. The location is part lot 29, concession 2, parts 3, 4, and 9 of Plan 39R, 12353 Longreach Road. Mr. Ty, by what method and on what date was notice of this zoning bylaw amendment application given?
Notice of the application was given by first-class prepaid mail on March the 15th to all property owners within 120 meters. The notice was also circulated to all prescribed agencies under the Planning Act. A sign was also posted on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and what it would accomplish?
The purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject lands from rural exception number 34 to rural residential holding and rural exception number 34 holding. The rezoning will serve to fulfill a condition of consent, application B27 2018, as granted by council on January the 14th, 2019. A holding provision is being placed on the zoning until a natural heritage evaluation is completed to the satisfaction of the municipality, which formed a condition of the granting of provisional consent.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. Does the owner or applicant wish to make any comments this evening? Mr. McLean has said no, he wishes to make no comments. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application? There are none noted. Are there any questions or comments regarding this proposed zoning bylaw amendment from members of council? There are none noted. Mr. McLean, do you wish to make any final comments? Mr. McLean indicates he does not wish to make any final comments. And Mr. Ty, do you have any final comments?
No, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. Does council wish to make a decision at this time on this zoning bylaw amendment application? Yes? I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council receives the report regarding rezoning application Z03 2019 as prepared by the municipal planning consultants, and that council enacts a bylaw to rezone certain lands located in part lot 29, concession 2, parts 3, 4, and 9 of Plan 39R 12353 of the municipality of Brighton, from rural exception number 34 zone to rural residential holding zone and rural exception number 34 holding zone, which will also serve to amend the provisions of the RU 34 zone. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. And that ends our statutory public meeting, and I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council rise from the statutory public meeting April 8th, 2019, and move back to the regular planning session at 7:08 p.m. Is there any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And we have a few planning reports before us. The first one is with regard to the Clamp subdivision, Foxden and Deerfield. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further, Your Worship. As council may recall, this was on the agenda for March the 11th. It was deferred to allow staff to come forward with additional information. The report before you this evening intends to fulfill that requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council receives the report regarding the Clamp subdivision as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, that council directs staff to suspend any further efforts in respect to acquiring Block 36 in the Clamp subdivision for the purposes of a street connection. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. The next report is with regard to Hamilton Woods West subdivision, being the Gordon Toby Developments Part Lot 15, Registered Plan 28, being part of Lot 2, Concession 1. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Again, Your Worship, this matter was deferred from March the 11th. Staff are bringing this report back to council for your further consideration, given the resolution of council on the previous report regarding the Clamp subdivision.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council receives the report regarding the Hamilton Woods West subdivision as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and that council of the municipality of Brighton resolve to approve proposed red line revisions to draft approval plan for Hamilton Woods West subdivision, file number sub 2011-001, as illustrated on the plan prepared by Van Meer Limited Engineering and having red line revised February 13th, 2019. Is there any discussion? Mr. Ty, we did receive a few pieces of correspondence by email with regard to some drainage concerns. I saw that you had replied to those, and it seems to the satisfaction of the person concerned. Do you care to make any comments on that?
Through the chair, yes. There has been email dialogue with myself and one area resident. As far as I'm to understand, her questions were adequately addressed. I'm not sure if there's any issues outstanding at the moment.
That's my understanding as well. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. And the next item is a closure of a portion of the road allowance being Factory Street located between Lot 1 and on RP number 490 and Lot 28 on RP number 28. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further, Your Worship.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that the report regarding the partial closure of the noted road allowance as prepared by the municipal planning consultant be received, and that council directs staff to commence with the process pertaining to request for closure of a road allowance in accordance with the requirements of the Municipal Act, and further that the balance of this report be received by council. Are there any questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Rowley?
Just a comment, I never knew we had a Factory Street until I read this. And yet I should have traveled it many times as a kid.
There you go. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. The next item on our agenda is the stop up and close and convey of a municipal road allowance, proposed application and procedures. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight in this one?
Nothing further.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council receives this report regarding proposed application and procedures for considering a request to stop up, close, and convey a municipal road allowance, and that subject to the review and approval of council, staff be directed to bring forward an adoption bylaw for the May 13th, 2019 meeting of council, and further that the balance of this report be received. Are there any questions or comments from members of council? Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, these road allowances have been put in place for over 300 years, and I cannot see us, this council, changing them and letting people just coming and buying up the road allowance because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. The process that we have going right now, that anything that we do is amended with a subdivision change or a change, should stay in place and give the council the control of what's going on so people can convey on land and nobody would be caught with trespassing. So I'm against this. moving it. I'd like to keep it status quo as it is. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay? Thank you.
But in this case, this would be, staff would be bringing forward a policy and procedure with regard to the future closing or stopping up of road allowances. Is that how I read this report, Mr. Ty?
Yes, under the Municipal Act, property owners have a right to inquire and otherwise request council's consideration to stop up, close, and convey a municipal road allowance, an open municipal road allowance. However, in Brighton, contrary to other municipalities that we have canvassed leading up to this evening, Brighton has never had a formal process. So from time to time, staff will receive an inquiry, will come forward with a letter report to council seeking direction, and if council are amenable to stopping up, closing, and conveying the road allowance, then the municipality embarks on the full Municipal Act exercise, which includes advertising and further reports to council and so on. Up until the present time, that individual, that ratepayer, has proceeded or could proceed at the expense of the ratepayers of the municipality at large. In staff's opinion, a request coming from an individual should be the responsibility of that individual. And what we have done, and certainly I support the comments from Councillor LeBlanc. In my opinion, as a professional planner, council ought to maintain the outlook that you are custodians of lands in the municipality, not necessarily offering them for sale. But it does happen from time to time. However, in the actual preamble of the policy, we make the statement, the municipality of Brighton supports the retention of road allowances in order to provide opportunities for current and future public access. However, the municipality will give consideration to the closure and disposal of a road allowance in circumstances where the road allowance cannot or will not be required as a road, or where the subject road allowance is not viable means of public access to a water body or other public access point. So, at the onset, the individual wishing to make this application is put on notice that this municipality maintains a rather dim view of disposal of the road allowances.
Does that make sense, Councillor LeBlanc?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Through
I'm
you,
still the mayor.
I mean, mayor, sorry. I always look, I think Laura's always said.
There you go. Carry on.
Yeah. Anyway, through you, Mayor. The thing is, I like how it's been for 300 years. I understand what you're saying and what we're trying to convey. But as it is now, they still have to come with a subdivision agreement or an agreement to do that. To change it, I think what you're opening up a system where they can just go to the Sharp Street, fill out a form, and then come here and try to buy it. Some people are going to try to control it, and they could be used against people. The way it is now, it's been set up for 300 years. It works very well. I see.
Councillor Tadman.
I know you're very passionate about this, but we have previously in other councils agreed to close up when it made sense. And I think that we need to listen to our planner and take his information and consider it at least, because sometimes it makes good sense to close a road.
And in this case, if I may, we're not opening the world up for potential sale of road allowances. In fact, one might argue that under today's non-existent policy, that opportunity exists at a much greater level than under this policy, which puts the onus of cost on an applicant, on someone who wants to come forward and ask to purchase a road allowance. So I appreciate what you're saying. I'm supportive of what you're saying, entirely because I think what you're saying is consistent with what the policy that's been brought forward by staff says.
Even if I get through you, Mayor, even if I don't, you won't see me in the paper and you won't see me on Facebook. I will vote my way, but Thank you very much for bringing it up.
Very well. Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. Any further questions or comments? I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And those opposed? The motion is carried. The next report from staff is lands for future residential development, forecast available land inventory. Mr. Tai, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further, Your Worship, other than I did provide council with a slightly larger map at the beginning of the meeting in hopes that it's a little easier on your eyes to try and interpret.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receives the report regarding lands for future residential development. Forecasted available land inventory is prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and that council directs staff to forward the report and findings to the planning consultant conducting the official plan review. Is there any discussion from members of council? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. Just maybe an explanation. I'm looking at kind of just north of deferred growth priority 2/3 in the Lower Trent Conservation Screening Area. Just for some information that I might have had years ago, do we have wellheads there, or basically is there an area there that should be designated as source water protection? Am I in the correct area there? Just do you see where I am?
You're like Little Lake Road and Alexander Road area?
Yeah, just south of there, kind of.
I believe it is further to the west.
Okay,
Thank you. And further south of Little Lake Road, yeah. Councillor Tadman?
Through you, Mayor, to our planner, Daryl. Lower Trent has all mapping for any wetlands, so you would have considered all their mapping when you did this map?
Through the chair, yes, we have access to all of their screening mapping, so we were able to actually superimpose it on the official plan schedule for the Brighton urban area to take that into account when we prioritize the deferred growth areas.
Thank you.
Anything further? Go ahead, Councillor LeBlanc.
Mayor, through your planner, I won't do it anymore. That's all right. No, Mayor.
Hey, you.
Did you talk to some of the developers about lands they wanted to develop when we looked at this map and how bad a shape we are for further development?
Not as yet. This exercise has not been open for public consultation. It will be subject to referring this report to the planning consultants completing the official plan review. It will become public information and review at that time, yes.
So once this goes forward to the consultant preparing our OP review, all of that, during that process, becomes a very public consultative process.
That's one of the committees that I'm on as a councillor.
It is.
Yeah. So this is one of the reviews that, in that process, because it's going to be my first process, because I probably won't get another one, are we allowed to get the developers involved as a committee to look at lands for future development and part of this process? Is that part of the process we look at through you, planner?
Through the chair, it would be premature to, I believe, strike a committee of developers at this particular point in time. However, that would not be staff's call. It would be the planning consultants conducting the review. However, I can advise that we do have one developer, local developer, who has applied for serving on the
OP review committee.
The steering committee for the OP review.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Tai. We'll move into unfinished business. The first item is the two appointments for the official plan review committee, and I have a motion. Oh, there it is. Moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council appoint councillors Doug LeBlanc and Ron Anderson as council representatives to the official plan review committee. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Yeah, and now I'll turn the floor over to Councillor Rowley to discuss the Bay of Quinte Regional Marketing Board. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. So as I said at the beginning of the meeting, I received an email late today from Mr. Doug Stevenson, the gentleman who made the presentation here on behalf of Bay of Quinte a few weeks ago. They are getting ready to go to print with their regional discovery guide. And although I know we are still deliberating our budget, whether or not we will be a partnership with Bay of Quinte. If we were to do so, it would be, what's the word that I'm looking for? It would be good for us to be part of this discovery guide, which they are going to print next Monday. So I guess what I'm looking for is kind of an early acceptance of the Bay of Quinte partnership, which I believe we've allotted approximately, is it $17,000? Right. So if we could accept that contract with Bay of Quinte, then we could maybe move forward. I know Councillor Anderson knows that the Chamber of Commerce is ready with some print material, and I am also, as I sit on DBIA, we are meeting this week. I'm sure that we could get something together so that we could at least have 2 pages in their new guide, which would probably market and promote Brighton for before the summer season.
So I will ask you to put a motion on the floor, please.
So my motion would then be that we approve the contract between the municipal, is it a contract or a MOU?
Let's call it a partnership.
A partnership.
Yeah.
I like that word, partnership. I would ask that we approve the partnership between the municipality of Brighton and the Bay of Quinte Regional Marketing Board ahead of the rest of our budget deliberations, or as Candace has something there.
The clerk has a motion that was written that council enter into a partnership with the Bay of Quinte, should be Regional Marketing Board, but Regional Marketing Board. Does that work?
Yes.
Is there a seconder? I'm putting you down as the mover. I assume that's okay. Is there a seconder? Councillor Anderson? I'll open the floor to discussion. Councillor Bateman.
The only question I'd have, we have our next budget meeting Wednesday. If we discuss this Wednesday and made sure the budget would approve, do we not have enough time if they're not printing till Monday?
Monday's or Wednesday's committee of the whole, so those decisions would still have to go to a council meeting, and the earliest that could be would be Monday, right?
I'm going to suggest that even if we make this decision tonight, we're already getting a little bit behind the 8 ball from a design perspective. They're going to want to they likely have most of what they want to print in place. They're going to have to make some alterations, and we may be already pushing them back a little bit. Councillor Anderson?
I think because if we're making the commitment this year, we're making the commitment for that amount of money, so this will give us some bang for our buck. At the same time, we probably need the time to check proofs and that type of thing. So this isn't going to happen by Monday, but I think the proofs and those type of things will be established, and it'll be done properly without mistakes, I hope. So.
Mr. Stevenson seems to think we can be ready for the print on
He said we wouldn't be pushed into making a decision. I think something tells me.
Not pushed, but...
No. But anyway, I think this is an excellent idea. If we're getting involved with tourism and we have an opportunity here to take advantage of this season, let's do it.
Council knows I'm supportive of going down this road. I would just caution council that this would be yet another pre-budget decision made. We've already directed staff to let all of the RFPs for roads projects and vehicles, a couple of very expensive vehicles, or one very expensive vehicle. So this, again, ties our hands from a budgetary perspective, and doesn't allows for less wiggle room if that's what we were looking for on Wednesday. So just a cautionary note, but I remain supportive. Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Tadman.
As you probably know, I think I was the only one that didn't support this to begin with, and I think we're putting enough money between the west and the east with the county and Quinte and 17,000 isn't a sneeze. And I don't think at this point, without, when we're pushing for almost a 6% increase until we deliberate, I don't think that this is wise spending of our money, and so I won't be supporting it.
Yeah, 17.5 represents about a 0.22% tax increase. So just for everyone's about a quarter of a percentage of tax increase. Councillor Anderson.
Councillor Tabman, I think another way to look at this is we aren't doing anything with economic development other than considering Quinte economic development. But I think tourism is something that we need to focus on more. It is our economic driver for this area during 6 months of the year at least. Tourism happens every day, all year round anyhow. So I think by jumping on this and being put on the map again, and I know the Chamber of Commerce is got some great plans, but I don't think we can put all our apples into their basket. So I think we need to move on it.
When you say put us on the map, you really need to emphasize that because it's literal.
That's what Mr. Stevenson's
It's literal.
going to do.
Yes, Councillor Tabman.
And once again, I'll remind everybody that Presqu'île draws 260,000 people a year with lots of tourists. And Applefest, I don't know how many, because you hear different numbers bandied around, but let's say 20 to 25,000 people come for that. We're known in the area for tourists, and where else are we going to draw them other than Applefest and Presqu'île? Downtown, we got the Chamber, we got the DBIA. I don't know, what are you going to encourage tourists to do here? Sit in the Memorial Park? I don't know what you're driving for.
Now that we have Wi-Fi, Memorial Park would be a good place to sit. Councillor Bateman, did you have any comments?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor.
There it is.
It's just, you touched on it, if we do another pre-approval for the budget, if we say yes to this now, we're basically saying prior to April 10th, yes, and we don't have our full complement here, so I understand what they're saying, and I support the economic development, but it's the pre-budget part, so we're sitting here tonight saying yes to something before we have our budget talk. That's my only concern.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Any further discussion? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you. For the total amount of 17.5, I think it's a missed opportunity to leverage hundreds of thousands of dollars that our partners of Bay of Quinte can put in. And Brighton has been lacking in promotion and marketing as far as tourism goes. So I'm supportive of moving ahead with Bay of Quinte.
Councillor Tabman.
Well, this is put on the floor as an urgent in nature, and I don't see this as urgent. We've got a lot of debating to go and to try to get our tax increase down, and I guess that's all I want to say. I'm not supporting it.
Councillor Rowley.
The urgency is the timeline. It's
That's already been explained. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
With the deadline being Monday or before, like, do we have information ready to go? Like, we're talking about promoting, right? So what do they have that's going in then to promote?
Councillor Rowley.
Down.
We'll have information ready to go by Monday. It will get to Mr. Stevenson before Monday.
Without an economic development officer, I think it's a good comment. Could you maybe inform council where that information might be coming from?
For the magazine. Yeah. I'm hoping through the Chamber and with the DBIA as well.
Has that been?
We have stuff. I'm working with them this week.
Has that been discussed with them?
The partnership has been discussed with them, yes. Okay. Like I said, this has just been dropped in my inbox just a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, I saw it as well. Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor LeBlanc.
I thought when we talked at budget, we had this approved, fully knowing that when I talked to Council, through you, Mayor, Councillor Anderson had planted the seed in my head a while back that we weren't going to make this year's map and promotion, but we were still going to put the 17,500 towards it. And that was the belief that with that seed, you planted that in my head, Councillor Anderson, which still stays there. And now we come tonight that we can make the map. But we had approved it in the budget the last time we said we were, and then it was gonna go. I understand we gotta do some cuts, but, there.
Anything further? All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. We'll move into bylaws. I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council gives this bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend bylaw number 140/2002 as otherwise amended of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton as it applies to all lands within the corporate limits of the municipality. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council gives this bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend bylaw number 140/2002 as otherwise amended of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton as it applies to certain lands located in Part Lot 29, Concession 2, Part 3, 4, and 9 of Plan 39R 12353 in the Municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? Councillor Bateman?
My only concern when I read it, and Mr. Ty answered it, when they're gonna have the 14 parking spots, I think that's what it was, estimated. When you go on, I like the services this place has to offer, and I think it'd be a value add for our community. So, I'm
I
good.
believe, no, wrong one. This is the Long Reach Road. Yeah. Yeah.
I apologize.
We'll get there. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. No. I believe this one is Main Street. Moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council gives this bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend bylaw number 140/2002 as otherwise amended of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton as it applies to certain lands located in Part Lots 12 and 13 in Registered Plan 28, Part 1 of Plan 38R, 3861, being 148 Main Street in the Municipality of Brighton. Councillor Bateman?
What I said earlier.
Thank you, sir. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Oh, it is. We'll now move into question period. If you have a question with regard to anything on tonight's agenda, please come forward. And state your name for the record, even if you're a usual suspect, sir.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Bob Collins, 24 Foxden Drive. The Clamp property, which you're talking about, 36, is now back into his hands. When is he going to do or finish off sidewalks, curbs, or anything? I understand you can't get in touch with the guy or the company. What is going to happen with that particular property now? And I've talked to Darrell about the shaping of my property. It's cut off because the road was there. Now I want it squared off if I sell the property. What's going to happen to that?
Mr. Ty, are you able to answer either of those questions?
Through the chair, yes. The municipality Phase 3 of the Clamp subdivision has not yet been approved, although Phase 3 has been developed for about 10 years. It has not yet been assumed. The municipality continues to hold a substantial amount of money in terms of the letter of credit. So, following council's direction this evening, we will then go back to the developer's engineer and start looking at details. Are there any outstanding deficiencies that should reasonably be repaired after a 10-year period? And also, what does the municipality require in terms of the engineering, the detailed design work that would be required in rendering Block 36 into a building lot, i.e. curb, squaring up the corners of of the adjoining properties and the sidewalk.
I have one more question here. This is from off the website for tonight's meeting. The proposed drainage improvements, they're going to put a drain from the back of my house to the street. And I said, who's going to do that?
Mr. Ty?
Through the chair, that would be shared cost-wise between Toby and Clamp. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Cheryl Langevin, Mayor. On page 15 of 99 with the proposal for the change of the bylaw for the physiotherapy, it mentions at the bottom that a medical clinic shall also be permitted. Here we are now spending $1 million some odd to add to our Brighton clinic, and now we're going to okay a medical clinic within the physiotherapy area. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I don't understand that section.
I suspect it's semantics, but Mr. Ty?
Through the chair, yes. A medical clinic is captioned with other like uses such as physiotherapy, chiropractic, and massage, and therefore that was simply replicated in this bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
So medical clinic could be doctors or paramedical opportunities
Right, okay.
as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, David Green. This is a planning question, and it's in regards to the Sussex development that was talked about. There's a great amount of misunderstanding in regards to what is going on with the Sussex development that was originally planned and demonstrated on Main Street beside Len's RV. And according to the letter that we have received from Sussex, that they no longer are in agreement with that land and have asked council to consider a change in location. And then we hear that there is the possibility that a retirement home may still go at Len's RV, but it may not be a Sussex property. And I was hoping that there was an opportunity for clarification with Mr. Ty being with us this evening.
So as you know, Mr. Green, I'm only supposed to permit questions about items on the agenda, but I'll ask council if they will permit this question to move forward. Is that okay with members of council? Councillor Tadman?
I don't have a problem at all. I don't know about the rest of council.
Anyone else? Does anyone have a problem? No? Mr. Ty, do you have any comments?
Through the chair, the original or the previous site at opposite Len's RV was approved by council through an official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, the one property for a senior's retirement residence. Subsequent to that, I believe in January, the property owner came back with an application seeking to sever that parcel out from the commercial block. That has since been done. The next step for that developer would be to come forward with a proposed site plan and the necessary requirements to support that application, which we have not yet seen. With respect to the whether it's Sussex or someone else, we only have anecdotal information as to who may or may not be developing on that site. Who develops on that site is of questionable interest to the planning department. The use of the land for a senior's retirement resident is a principal use and is of great interest to us. Whether or not Sussex, and I'm not sure what letter Mr. Green is referring to, I've not received any or seen any recent correspondence. However, in the event that Sussex is proposing to relocate elsewhere in the municipality, there is an application that has been outstanding since March of 2018 as it would apply to the Kraft property, and the municipality has recently received a resubmission following a...
And just for everybody's information, the Kraft property is the property immediately west of No Frills.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Your Worship. And the revised submission now shows a senior retirement residence there. We have only just received that, and we're in the process of reviewing it and circulating.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Green?
Yes, thank you.
And for everyone's information, I've had meetings with both the developers beside Lens RV and the potential developer beside the No Frills, and both have indicated they intend to move forward or make up, well, in the case of the Lens RV, they've made application, they just need their site plan. They intend to continue forward with the seniors development, and what Mr. Tai tells us this evening is consistent with the message that I was given 4 or 5 weeks ago with regard to the Craft property as well. Thank you. Any other questions from members of the public, sir?
My name is Tony Soulis, 8 Foxstand Drive. I have a question relating to the Hamilton Woods project. I don't know if it's appropriate, but there was a lot of planning and discussion done in the last council with respect to one of the developers, major developers there, not meeting the requirements of certain phases before going on to an additional phase. And I'm talking about phase 1 to phase 2. And I'd like to know if council is holding this developer to the agreement and requirements that were documented by this council before allowing the developer to move on to another phase. Through the planner?
Can you give specific information on what it is you're looking for that developer to complete?
Yes, in fact, I've been gone for several months and just back this past week. And then in seeing that there has been some changes to the Foxstand Drive blueprint, and that there's a change to the road system in that area, and also knowing that there are more houses being developed on Cove and on Raglan. I want to know if, in fact, the storm sewer planning for that whole area has been approved or met by the developer before allowing that developer to move on to yet another phase. My concern is that in the past, we've had instances where the developer has not fulfilled commitments which were associated with one phase before moving on to a second phase. And we would not want that to see that happen again.
Are you prepared to comment, Mr. Tai?
Only through the chair. The proposed Hamilton Woods subdivision east and west continues to be delayed simply because the developer has not yet been successful in coming forward with an acceptable stormwater management approach. Once that happens, and it's been a while since they first came forward with their report, but once that happens, we receive the report, any submission, it goes to Lower Trent and it goes to our peer review engineer for review, and it will be sent back until it's acceptable to the municipality.
Does that answer your question, sir?
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor.
Any other questions? Yes.
Brenda Richardson, just one quick one, Mr. Tai. When the stormwater management plan does ever gets approved for Hamilton Woods, it's always been said that there will be a public consultation. Does that still stand?
I believe it does, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Would that be through the municipality?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the public? We have no in-camera session this evening. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton Council Planning Meeting held on April 8th, 2019. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that the April 8th, 2019 Council Planning Meeting adjourn at 7:49 p.m. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Do y'all want to stay? You want to stay all night? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Good night, everybody.